The Premier League returns this weekend with two big derbies to look forward to. Manchester United play their first Premier League game in almost a month when they travel across Manchester to face Pep Guardiola's City on Sunday. How disruptive will that break have been for Erik ten Hag?
Yeah, when you're playing games and winning them, you want to be playing every week, if not every few days. We'll have to wait and see. United for me are still a team very much of, what's the modern term, work in progress.
Perfect.
And that's that. Now you know.
Manchester City coming against Manchester United. It's a good opportunity, is it, for Pep Guardiola's team to flex their muscles? Erling Haaland will be licking his lips, won't he, taking on a Manchester United team that still don't look particularly secure?
Well, you would expect it to be a fixture that sometimes takes a life of its own because of the nature of the fixture. Man City are an infinitely better side than Manchester United.
Infinitely?
Infinitely. Significantly, massively, undeniably, irrefutably, unequivocally. They're a far better side than Manchester United. And I expect that to be exhibited this weekend. I think it'll be normal service, or as normal service as it's been in recent years. And, Ten Hag is getting to grips. He's wearing better suits, which I'm pleased to see. But
which
also
was your main takeaway?
Well, it wasn't. My takeaway was
Liverpool.
about how people present themselves in the public domain often reflects the kind of person that they are, and it might have been misguided or it might have been misquoted. It wasn't certainly. He's not defined by the bleeding suit he wears.
No.
But by definition, you do judge people by their approach and their appearance. Man United were never as bad as the 4-0 defeat to Brentford. They were bad in that game, but they were never as bad as that 4-0. Then they needed that bounce. They needed that. If you can only bounce if you hit rock bottom, and I think that was the point where they hit rock bottom, and it was all of them, not just the players. It was the management, it was a selection of players, it was the coaches. The whole lot were making ridiculous decisions, and they weren't that great against Liverpool. Liverpool dominated that game and perhaps should have done better, and Man United got a result, and all of a sudden they were revitalised and re-energised, and it was a redemptive story.
Yeah, tactically they adapted and they got it right because
they'll
they've
get
been
beat
playing
by Man City on Saturday.
They're playing slightly differently before that, and then decided that actually those tactics weren't working for them.
Depends if they're fool enough to put Harry Maguire on.
Well, they haven't been playing Harry Maguire in
if
the
they
Premier
do,
League.
Erling Haaland will be licking his lips.
Meanwhile, the weekend gets underway at 12:30 on Saturday with Arsenal hosting Tottenham, exclusively live on talkSPORT. Arsenal top of the table. They were brilliant against Brentford. I did the game last Sunday. They're top of the table after winning comfortably, taking on a team that obviously comes with another narrative because it's their North London rivals. But Tottenham themselves, despite winning a lot of games and getting over the line, haven't been playing particularly well. I did their Marseille game, their Sporting game. They weren't particularly impressive in either of those two matches.
Yeah, no, but they've been digging results out. I mean, they have a pragmatic approach under this manager. They've got a bit of steel about them that they've been accused by everybody of not having in their recent history. That's not just a new thing. And I just feel it's a different Spurs now. And I take your point. Arsenal have been fabulous. I saw them play at Bournemouth. And the question is, can they keep that going for a hard 9 months? With the younger players, I think that's very difficult.
Does it show you how important a manager can be in the fact that
the manager's massively important?
Antonio Conte has transformed the mentality of this Tottenham group.
He's been afforded the opportunity to transform the mentality because he's been supported by the club. But they made the appointment. Antonio Conte is an outstanding manager. And of course, the manager is the players go and win the games, but a manager picks the players, structures the players, gets the players into a condition to be able to go and win games. The manager is the most important person in a football club besides the person that pays the bills. Absolutely. So the manager setting a blueprint. Antonio Conte is a significant manager for Tottenham Hotspur because he's a departure. Mourinho was a significant manager because he departed from certain types of manager that Daniel Levy would take and control and develop and be able to manipulate. Pochettino, taken from Southampton, was a certain type of manager until it became difficult for him to manage. When you start putting heavyweights like Conte in the dugout, you've got to support them. Otherwise, what's the point of having them?
And what he does, from the outside looking in, he pushes the players to almost the point where he's falling out with them.
Which is
gets the most of them. I mean, it takes the players out of their comfort chairs. There's no easy ride at Spurs anymore for players who are slacking.
And if they win, they'll go with it. And if they don't, they won't.
In terms of, obviously, the two different approaches, Mikel Arteta, long-term approach, slow but sure, getting the turnover of the dressing room, getting control of the club, and then Antonio Conte coming in, immediately stamping his authority on the group. Which one of them do you think is better placed to win a trophy first? Because that's what both these two teams
I think it's
won
a cup,
trophy, isn't he?
I think it's a cup for these two teams where they are right now. Well, I think Spurs, as you alluded to, I think Spurs can win games without being at their best.
What about Arsenal? Are they serious title contenders despite the fact that
I think they're
top of the
serious
table?
top four. I think everyone's going to play a poor second to City, unless City run into a series of injuries to main players.
Do you think they're significantly more resolute now, Arsenal? I mean, or have they just been lightly raced in the early part of the season?
Well, they've had a good run of fixtures. Look, this is a big test from at the weekend. I come back to they've got a young squad who, over a season, it's 9 hard months of, hard work, concentration, disappointments. How you deal with those disappointments. And I was telling someone this just recently. When I stopped playing, I bet I've had half a dozen. It was a long time ago. Half a dozen players that I played against have said to me, when we played your Liverpool teams, we always felt it was a group of men. And when I look back on our teams, the nucleus was always late 20s, and that they can drag through the younger guys as the season drags on and becomes difficult. So that's how I see Arsenal. I think promising, upwards and onwards. I think they have a great chance of getting in the top four. I don't see them challenging for the title.
Can Tottenham win the league?
No.
Can they contend to win the league? Can they push Manchester City?
No.
Why?
Because they're not good enough. And if Liverpool get their boots on, they won't be good enough to contend with Liverpool, and Liverpool are not good enough to contend with Man City. So Tottenham and Arsenal will be further down the pecking order.
So we're giving up in September in terms of a title race?
Well, it's not a case of giving up, it's a case of being realistic. Nobody would expect Arsenal to win the Premier League, and no one would expect it. There's no point building a narrative that's a ridiculous one. No one expects these teams to be winning Premier Leagues. They expect them to be competing and bridging the gap. And maybe Tottenham drop out of the Champions League if they do and play in the Europa League. I think you can only play in the Europa League if you've dropped out of the Champions League at the group stages. Is that right? Or can
Correct.
you go in after the 16s?
No.
Okay, so maybe they won't get into that situation because maybe they should qualify from their Champions League group, albeit they've lost their last game. But notwithstanding, I would expect them to qualify. I do expect Tottenham to win something with Conte. It certainly won't be a Premier League and it won't be a Champions League. It might be a League Cup or an FA Cup. And I think you'll get a lot, very early as it is, you'll see the development. All we're talking about is the potential of these two teams. The potential of these two teams, Arsenal and Tottenham. Now, you might see some outcome on Saturday of how these two teams shape up against one another because they are vying for the same space, really, aren't they, Graeme?
Yeah, I think this is a big test for Arsenal. I think would this be their hardest game of the season so far? They went to United,
Well, they went to United, didn't they?
But they did well at United.
Yeah, they've beaten Palace, they've beaten Brentford.
Yeah, they did well at United. You're thinking when they went behind, they got back into it. You're thinking they're now on the front foot, then they
They
conceded
were unlucky
one.
to have a goal disallowed in that match as well.
Yeah, and they have a goal. They concede one on the breakaway, as I remember. So, I mean, this will be an interesting watch. Arsenal, I think, only attempt to play one way. Tried to be dominant.
If you were picking between the two sides, who's likely to be more successful? And I know everyone can say all success is relative. Who would you pick,
As I said
Spurs
to
or Arsenal?
Sam, I think, when you can win games at not being at your best.
Then it's Spurs then, right?
Yeah, and then you factor in the youth that's involved at Arsenal. Yeah, they're a great watch, and when sun's shining and, everyone's confident because they've been winning games, you can appear to be better than you actually are. When they get a few, here's another way. If they get started, and they will, as everyone does, they start to lose a few games, say a back-to-back losses, then you'd really find out what you've got in the dressing room.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.